Okay. What's up, everyone? Glad people are already kind of trickling in here. We got David Romnero, a person of no small spiritual advancement themselves. I think this will be a really great one. I've got Angel Marcloid here. She's waiting to come in. Angel is the mastermind behind Fire-Toolz and apparently a bunch of other projects that all sound amazing. But I just found out about Angel. I kept seeing Fire-Toolz popping up in my Twitter world, and I just eventually clicked I eventually checked Fire-Toolz out on YouTube, and I was like, all right, this is the shit. I'm now immediately super into this. And not just immediately liking it, but the sort of the exciting confusion that comes from just being zapped in the mind and the heart by something fresh and somewhat incomprehensible, at least right off the bat. I want to talk about I want to see what's up with Angel's where she's coming from with her music. We chatted a little bit before this, but she's one of the few people that I've reached out to cold, um, because I don't know. I'm meeting nowadays. I meet the coolest people online, which is convenient given that we're trapped in bubbles, obviously. Word. Okay, that's pretty much it for preamble. Let me know if there's any tech stuff. You'd think at this point that the audio and the visual would be cool, but I was still getting blurry face last couple streams, but now I'm like right up against the router. Should be all right. Okay. Let's bring Angel into the stream. Actually, let me just turn that off and turn this off. All right, here we go. What's up, Angel?
Hi.
Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Can you hear everything okay?
I can hear you great. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep, we're good.
Good, and I see you great. Cool. How is everything? How's quarantine treating you?
Oh, quarantine is probably treating me better than it's treating the majority of the people it's treating. So, there's a little bit of privilege there because I'm a homebody and I already like being isolated. So, I know a lot of other people are. I mean, even the people that aren't dealing with the illness, they're suffering in many ways because of it. And I'm definitely feeling the collective consciousness and the energy from it. I mean, it's been really, really harsh mentally, emotionally, spiritually on me. But as far as day-to-day living, I already kind of just stay home and work on music anyway. So
yeah.
Now I live out in the boonies, and I don't know, there's not a friend of mine in sight.
Yeah, maybe you were saying that works for you though in the first place, right? You're sort of reclusive outside Chicago, is that or near-ish? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to drag some friends over for dinner here and there, but just here and there.
Yeah. It's all about the dinner parties lately. Everything becomes very adult.
Yeah, and I have a yard, so that's a dinner and a yard is good for social activity, I think.
Yeah, wholesome living. Yeah, I got the same thing. I moved out to LA just like a year ago, and so I find it's a yard, a porch, whole new world. I'm from New York originally. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I forget LA has that also.
Yeah.
Because usually somebody like me thinks of LA, I'm just thinking of hustle and bustle, but it's beautiful out there depending on where you are.
Yeah, I've been going for hikes, which is like being from New York my whole life. That has just never been my vibe.
There are mountains so close to you though, but they're so inaccessible.
There have been, I don't know if I hiked a mountain, but I hiked some hills that gave me a run for my money for sure with some of my new LA friends. Yeah.
Mm.
But
Cool.
yeah. But you're from in the for some reason I wrote that you were from Toronto. I have no idea where I got that. But yeah. So you're based in Chicago, but you're from Baltimore originally. Is that the deal?
Yeah, well, outside Baltimore. I mean, I grew up in um, a well, I guess you could call it a small town, but it was a bordering bigger town, so it didn't really feel like a small town
Yeah.
because like Annapolis was 10 minutes down the road, and um, you know, between Annapolis and Baltimore is, only about a 20 minutes of driving at the most, and then DC was equidistant from where I grew up as Baltimore, so I could have associated myself with either of the cities, but I spent more time in Baltimore playing music than I ever did in DC. So I
Yeah.
just I just say Baltimore for convenience. I still tell people I'm from Chicago, even though I'm really an hour and a half out,
Yeah.
because anybody within like a couple hours of Chicago is gonna say they're from Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really mostly about where you're doing your stuff, right? I mean, where you
Yeah, but there's
perform and
also, but growing up in a small place, probably does a whole lot to your personality. And just like growing up in a city would, but I'm just saying it's like very different. There's probably a temperament. I mean, I grew up in like a low key area, so when I moved to the city, it was like culture shock, and I never got used to it. And I got out of there like 7 years later, and I never sunk into it. So
yeah.
I was made for the small town, I think.
Yeah, 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 made for the reclusive life. I feel that. Yeah, because it seems like, I don't know. I wouldn't, listening to your music, I wouldn't be able to, off the bat, say that that's reclusive country music or
Yeah, or look
hectic.
at me, because like nobody that looks like me lives out here at
Yeah,
all. There's just guys in trapped shirts out here.
trapped.
Yeah,
Oof,
I mean,
rough. That's like,
the there's a metal scene. There's like a blue collar small town kind of metal guy kind of personality. And I just like, well, maybe it's because I spend so much time at the hardware store lately, but I just see them a lot.
yeah,
I see them
yeah,
around.
yeah. Well, blue collar metal's great. Trapped, maybe, not so much, especially
Yeah,
for
I know you're right. I
people.
don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just throwing things out there. Trapped
yeah.
is actually, trapped is a really bad word to use because just who they are these days.
Recently, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
guess trapped has a lot of connotations to it, and I shouldn't just like throw that word out there. It's kind of a bad word now.
yeah. I don't know. Oh, you were like just thinking of the riffs. You were
I,
like, you
I
were
was, yeah, no, no, I was really thinking I might as well have just said like maybe Black Label Society or like Five Finger Death Punch or something.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. But you're not allergic to like you're not allergic to certain kinds of metalcore, right? I mean, at
No, no,
least from what
no.
I read,
Oh no, I mean I love new metal. Well, depending on the band, but new metal and metalcore, and yeah, of course, I like a lot of that genty stuff that sounds like Meshuggah meets Linkin Park.
yeah,
I'm
I
like
can I
kind
can
of
get down.
I'm like really obsessed with that in the past year, going through a little bit of a phase.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, when I was young, like Dillinger Escape Plan,
Hmm.
seeing Dillinger Escape Plan open for Mr. Bungle on the Calculating Infinity tour,
Wow,
that was definitely like actual jaw open,
I bet.
vibes. But then the meathead aspect of it was always like I was like ambivalent. I'm like
Yeah.
I'm a 20-year-old dude, so like I like it, but then there's like limits to the tough guy.
Yeah, see, oh man, I have so many experiences in that scene because I mean, I grew up in that scene. I mean, I've seen Dillinger. I didn't see them in the Calculated Infinity era, but I saw them on the tour with Mike Patton,
Oh yeah,
like
that's the shit.
a little bit later, and then a few times after that. And I've just played like I was in kind of like sort of emo post-hardcore bands for a while, so I've played a lot of hardcore shows and punk shows because there's a lot of crossover, and then just oh man, I have such a vivid history of like meathead trauma,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
seeing fights, having fights inflicted on me that I didn't, instigate, or just like, you know, just even being kicked in the face by somebody who is dancing, just like so much. I don't know. Just I've spent so much time in my life standing like this, trying to enjoy a band.
Yeah.
I don't miss that stuff. I
Yeah.
remember one of the coolest experiences was seeing Terror, but being really far away and up really high. So I could look down at like the pit, which was like on a field because it was a festival, and the dust cloud that rose, and it was just like from far away it just looked like ants or something like
Yeah.
scurrying about or whatever. It was like kind of beautiful from out there. But
Yeah. Yeah.
being in it is gross.
Yeah, Terror is kind of cool. I used to listen to them at the gym a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, that's
I mean,
gym.
that's it's like very like programmatic music.
Yeah, if you can find a good tempo, like
Yeah, yeah. There's the cardio and then the breakdowns. Like
yeah, and the
it's good.
two-step parts
That's
too.
good for
Those are
the.
those are. I've always felt like two-step parts are almost tougher than the breakdowns.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just
yeah,
so beefy. They just sound like a ogre marching. You know?
yeah, yeah. Just lumbering.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in New York, like Madball was like the sort of standard bearer of like a show to get hurt at. But
I think your mic cut out, your audio cut out, or maybe it's me, but I don't know. Maybe the
and I don't know why.
oh,
Here we go. I'm back.
there you are.
Huh? Who knows why?
So, were you able to see that your audio disappeared?
Yeah, it said your mic is muted.
Oh, okay.
Who knows? We'll see.
Okay.
But
You're quieter now, but I will just turn you up. Yeah, a little bit.
But I shouldn't be. I have an idea of why something would happen. Pardon me. Let me just.
I edit for a podcast every single week. Don't feel bad. It's just constant like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah, I'm going for production value though. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be Rogan for this set. You know what I mean?
You're doing
But
you're doing a good Rogan.
here we go. I'm back, right? I'm back now.
You're Rogan and Jamie all in one.
Oh God! Like looking over to like when the jokes don't land to get your little like your little lackey to like give you the
Jamie, Google something.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so coming out of were you trying to think like you're talking about coming up in Baltimore. See, it's funny because I thought you just by listening to your music, I kind of assumed you were like very very young. Just based on I don't know, just because you got Fire-Toolz was new and I didn't really know your history and stuff. But you're talking about doing stuff in the mid aughts and whatnot. Like were you in that Baltimore hang at all of like fucking like the Wham City hang or like that whole kind of neon like the Dan Deacon realm or not so much?
No, barely.
Not so much.
I wanted to be, but I feel like at the time that was at its prime, or at least when I was started to be really exposed to it. I guess it's because my friends were like going to Micah and stuff like that, so I got exposure to it around that time frame. I was doing a lot of like just like pedal noise, feedback noise, like abstract, just that shit.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wanted to like be sort of a part of that crowd, and I had a bit of a complex. Like I felt like they all thought that I was a stupid amateur, and I was like trying to be cool, and I wasn't. So
Well, what are they doing now? I mean, that's not cool. But
I don't know really, actually.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure one of my email addresses still gets the Wham City newsletter.
Oh, is that
But
because I had a lot of love for that scene in a lot of ways. Just coming through Baltimore, that was always kind of. I can't say that any of those specific bands or artists like really touch my soul exactly, but just the whole scene there, that was always my thing of like Baltimore in the 2000s was the kind of.
Yeah, it was really defining of Baltimore in the 2000s for real. I mean, I've seen Dan Deacon a bunch like live, and I would see other shows and stuff once in a while, but I have memories of emailing like Wham City and being like, hey, can I get on this show? This is my blah 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 slash blah 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 slash blah 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 core project. Like, and I know I just sounded like an annoying little kid. But
That's
see, I
weird
never
though.
I never really grew up. I'm like going on 36 now, and I feel like I'm 12.
Do you? Yeah, yeah.
Kind
That's
of not in a good way though. Not in a
oh
like,
no.
oh, the world is full of wonder. I feel like a little baby.
Like like
Who
in
wants
like
a
it
mommy?
like insecure and stuff because I mean,
Um, maybe in some ways. I'm really secure in who I am, but I'm insecure in the sense that I'm afraid of the world. So
I this is
it's
not
it's a lot of both. It's yin
this
and
is
yang.
this is not an insane position, Angel. This is yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I just turned 40 this year, and it's weird. Like I feel younger than I did 10 years ago, in the
Why? You're
sense,
gonna die like really soon.
motherfucker.
Just kidding. No, that's
Also,
how I feel at
yeah,
35.
no,
I feel like I'm gonna
no,
die really soon.
I know, I know. No, no, I mean, I feel old, like physically, like my body's just like fucking, yeah, it's telling you're gonna die. But just as far as like being in touch with like what's going on, I feel like 10 years ago, I was like, man, like what are the kids? What the fuck are the kids all about? I'm 30, I don't know. But now I feel like I get what 20-year-olds. I feel like I get what's in their brains like better than I got. Like I feel like Gen Z. It's like I like skipped the whole millennial thing,
I
and
gotcha.
like and
You feel a resonance with
just
that.
somehow maybe it's that alternating generation shit, but yeah, I assumed you were Gen Z to the core. You know why? One of the reasons is because um there's like the certain sound and also like a visual aesthetic to Fire-Toolz that I was like, yeah, like what is that? And then I was like, I read some stuff. People were like, oh, she's coming out of like it's rooted in vaporwave to some extent. And I was like, is it? I was like, because I thought I hated vaporwave. I thought vaporwave sucked, but then I love Fire-Toolz. I was like, what's the relationship between that and vaporwave? Is that anything? Is it?
The word rooted in in vaporwave, that triggers me because it's like yeah, it's like you can file it under vaporwave, like if you want to. um I can see why anybody would, I guess. I couldn't at first, I can now. But it's like, to say that it's rooted in that, it's it's really like, that's crazy to me, because I don't know, it's rooted in jazz and noise and new age music and various other lots of different forms of electronic music, techno and house and hard style and it's prog and it's metal and all this stuff. So like vaporwave, it also is that, but to say that like vaporwave is this like core that all these things are sprouting out of, that makes zero sense to me. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
but at the same time, I think the majority of writers and a big amount of the individuals who will respond to it or talk about it or whatever, they kind of all call it vaporwave, or they'll say, vaporwave and metal, or vaporwave and screamo, I guess, or something like that. Um, and here's the thing, though. It's like, and this is a loaded subject, so I'm not going to go on and on about it. I really have to mute myself here because I think I've done some other interviews where like we've talked about it for like an hour because I just have so much to say about the subject of it. But really, it's that a lot of the things that really inspire me and really stuck with me since I was a kid are things that vaporwave really capitalizes on and exploits or taps into or whatever. And vaporwave is super, super popular right now. And so that's kind of like an advantage for me, because if I want to like sort of emulate a lot of this like old like fusion and electronic music I like and vaporwave exists, it's like we're made for each other. Like
Yeah.
vaporwave and what I'm doing, we're like a perfect match. So, and I
Right.
also have like actual vaporwave projects in which I would call them vaporwave because I'm using samples and like blah blah blah. So yeah, we're made for each other, but I just don't think that Fire-Toolz has a foundation in vaporwave at all. It has a foundation in all of these genres I grew up listening to,
Yeah.
and I'll throw in like a really vaporwave sounding part in one of my songs, like classic vaporwave, like a sample of like an old jazz song or something, and like give it that Malsoft sound or something like that. So I'll like use that element, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it kind of just seems like progressive, like electronic music, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was hearing when you said jazz first on the whole list of things. I mean, I was hearing like Matheny like a motherfucker. I mean, I was hearing absolute like total like
Awesome.
I
Thank
mean
you.
just I mean which is maybe why I kind of why it struck me so much. Cuz yeah, like I mean what I've heard of vaporwave, it's like there's this like cold, empty like end of history kind of this like placid airport kind of like the human being emptied out of the world in this kind of like I don't know like but I think what I responded to off the bat with Fire-Toolz is that it's like the coldness, there was a coldness in there, but it was like rubbing up against heat, and the human and the inhuman were kind of like, it sounds like crisis music. It sounds like a crisis. It doesn't sound like, man, the end of history's chill, why can't you get down? I mean, it sounds like this is fucked. Like at least to me. I don't know if that's not to
Yeah, I
read not
can.
to read historical political stuff into it, but the spirit.
Well, it's an interpretation, or that's what it brings up for you. And there's definitely a lot of that in there. I mean, there's definitely chaos, and there's a lot of serene moments, but sometimes they don't last very long, or they end up getting interrupted or combined with something completely different. And I think it's just kind of a reflection of like my own mind. But one thing is, I think most people that I talk to, that I might not know very well about, if we talk about my music, they do perceive a lot more, I guess, negativity. And I just mean that in like an all-encompassing way, like anything that could be taken as like negative, like whether it's dark, whether it's sad, whether it's like rage or whatever it might be. Um, they perceive a lot more of that than I'm actually putting into it. But it's also like
Yeah.
I get that because sometimes I'm just screaming my brains out and there's blast beats going and shit. So it's like I get that. But it's just like for some reason one way I can express really anything. I mean, a lot of the lyrics are pretty joyous. There's a lot of bliss in there at times, but there's also like a shit ton of pain too. So it's not
Hmm.
like anybody would be imagining those things. But sometimes it's like, at any point in time that the music is extremely aggressive, like I might just be admiring my cat in the lyrics. So, um, so there's definitely lots of like juxtaposition and like aggression combined with serenity or whatever. But yeah, as far as where I'm coming from, it's not a whole lot of anger or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes, but
Yeah.
not even that often.
Yeah, I didn't hear much anger in it. To me, like, I mean, I heard a sort of scary element, and to me, actual like real, just pure anger is not the scariest thing to me because it's so directly human and like normal in a way. It's healthy
Mhm.
anger, but it's like,
Sure.
to me, it's like when I just right off the bat hearing this sort of this fusiony element with this sort of like digitally distorted black metal style screaming. I mean, to me, I didn't hear anger or sadness, but there's a scary quality to it. Um, it's a
It is scary.
dystopian sort of futuristic,
Sure, yeah.
and actually, you know what? To me, the warmth that I was hearing was not so much warmth as in like love or anger or sadness, but actually the craft of the extent to which the smooth fusiony parts were like legit, the extent to which they're like actual Mathenied out, like sus chords and like these kind of like fourths and I was like, oh, so this is like hooked up jazz shit, like, you know what I mean, like it's so that kind of like yeah, that sort of made it like, okay, this isn't just like mash up, like, ooh, what if I took like this and combined it? It's like, no, this is actually like rigorously. And so to me, that's a human. I hear the human element when I hear that know-how and that craft. So I mean, that's Marcus in the comments asked, did you study jazz formally?
No. I didn't at all. I did take some drums and guitar lessons when I was a kid for chunks of time here and there. But I largely rejected jazz when I was young. Um, and though I listened to a lot of like Dream Theater and like maybe Steve Vai and stuff like that when I was pretty young, it was metallic enough and rock enough for me to, feel like it was the kind of music I liked. And I think basically it's because most of the formal training that you would take, especially as a drummer, not as much as a guitar player unless you wanted to, but as a drummer, it's just like normal to like start with classical and jazz. It's all about classical and jazz. Like,
Totally.
and it was so annoying because like as a kid, I've always been so creative and wanted to be so expressive, and I just couldn't handle like being forced to like learn swing and like play like little drummer boy type shit. Like I hated it. So I just kind of rejected jazz. But here's the thing. At the same time, I loved it. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like a certain kind of jazz. Whenever I hear like fusion and not like Duke Ellington, like when I heard like, something Dave Weckl was playing drums on or something, like when I'd hear it on the Weather Channel or when I'd hear it as like background music or in movies or something like that, like I would just get a really special feeling. But I always thought of that kind of sound and that kind of music as something that only existed in those mediums. Like I didn't know that like the stuff on the Weather Channel was like actual like artists who were like jamming at
Yeah,
a time out in the
right.
world.
Yeah, like you'd buy a record or like go see them
Yeah,
play or something. Yeah.
I remember asking my dad, and he was like, "Oh, that's something called Muzak. Like that's an archive, and the Weather Channel pays for it, and it's all stock music." And I was like, "Oh, so I'm never gonna be able to get a hold of this." So I would just tape Weather Channel broadcasts. I don't
No
even really
shit.
think I knew that was jazz at the time, and I definitely didn't know that they're actually mostly like legit artists. Like those were their songs that were already released in Weather Channel, like bought rights to play them. I didn't know that. Like if somebody would have just told me like, like, oh, that's Eric Marienthal, like he's the sax player, like on that, 5-day forecast, like I would have been like, Mom, buy me this album.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but back then jazz to me was like swing, and I just I hated that shit. I was a rock and roller, but I was also like melody really, like I remember being really really young and like melodies making me cry and not really understanding what was happening, but they would just like pierce my heart. Like I remember the first time I heard this one like Bon Jovi ballad. It's on Slippery When Wet, but I don't know what song it is. But I remember I have this really early memory of being like 3 or 4 and listening to it, just bawling my eyes out, and it was like the keyboard melody. It's just
Yeah.
like it was just pretty, and so I would get feelings like that when I would hear like fusion like in the background, like on TV and stuff. So I know that's a really long answer to the question, but
No,
it's
that's
like
great.
I did sort of grow up loving jazz without really realizing it, without engaging with it, without understanding what I was hearing.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to playing music or buying music, it was just like, rock, metal, prog kind of stuff, occasionally something poppy.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, I mean, Dream Theater will take you there. I mean, Dream Theater, you're like, oh, I'm into prog metal. I mean,
yeah,
most people get into that through just being a player. Like, I want to be Petrucci,
right.
or
Yeah.
whatever. But it sounds like you're actually vibing with it on this like more purely emotional level. Like you weren't even like, oh, imagine shredding like that. You're like actually like, no, these are beautiful
Yeah.
harmonic gestures and melodic
Yeah.
gestures and
Like
stuff.
I've always been impressed by the skill, and yeah, I mean I love the shreddiness of old Dream Theater for sure, and I love its complexity, but it's also, I mean, I can't really say that about the current stuff they're making. I just don't resonate with it much, but the old stuff, it really first and foremost is emotional for me, and the fact that it's so shreddy and complicated and like fun to listen to is just like a bonus
Yeah.
almost. you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, like, Images and Words, like that album, just like, oh God. Like,
It's pretty monumental, whether it's just aesthetically or technically. I mostly like teach guitar day job wise, and back in New York I had I would teach Dream Theater to this guy he was one of the top pediatric neurosurgeons in the city,
wow.
and he would just shred on this Petrucci stuff because like his the hands, like the surgeon hands,
Oh wow, they're so
he
precise.
it was crazy. Like he was basically like an almost beginner, but I would show him like one little pattern, and then he would just be like extrapolating it all over the neck immediately and shredding more than I could. I was like, Jesus, man,
Oh,
this is
that's really cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that kind of mind.
I used to well, my it was all my dad's idea, but my dad would videotape me like playing along to their songs on drums when I was a kid, because I was like mainly a drummer. I started out a drummer,
Mm.
and I don't know how the hell we got the address, because I was mailing videos and writing back and forth for like a short while with Mike Portnoy, the drummer.
Yeah.
Um, but how in the world did we get his home address? I still remember it in my head. I know he doesn't live there now, but I'm not going to say it, on the stream. But like,
Like
I
doxing,
still have it in my
fusion
head.
doxing.
Yeah, I don't know. He pisses me off sometimes. He does something that I don't like on the internet once in a while. But
Mm.
once in a while, I'll leave a comment. I'll be like, Mike, remember me? I'm that little kid that used to just send you VHSs, and you'd send me back drum heads and stuff.
Well, that's
But,
nice. He would do that. I mean,
oh
that's more
yeah,
than
so kind. He's very
yeah,
kind.
it's
He
very
has,
generous.
yeah, yeah. And I would get backstage and get photos. My parents would take photos of me standing with them. I never met Kevin Moore because he wasn't in the band the first time I saw them, but the rest of the guys all have like pictures of them with them when I was, I don't know, 10 or 9 or I don't know, something like
Yeah.
that. Whenever Images and Words was like on top of the world, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, because it's really like the sincere love of that music really comes through in your stuff, Because I mean, most people I know who like that that area of music, prog fusion, it's either like some guilty pleasure that they think is cheesy that they're not supposed to like, or it's like this sort of ironic sort of thing, which I hate that kind of ironic appreciation of music that is actually good. So, but I mean, you can just hear the love of the stuff, like an actual understanding of like real love of that music, in your stuff, which is like, I mean, that's like what makes it so legit.
Well, Fire-Toolz is something where there's no limit or rule, and so I just make music that without any plans, so it ends up just being like everything I enjoy kind of all rolled into one. There's like no, okay, that's not true. I was going to say there's no type of music that I would ever avoid putting in Fire-Toolz. But then I'm thinking I've never actually had well, I've kind of had like hip hop beats, but I've never like actually had like a rap part. Not that I would rap, I would get a guest vocalist,
Sure.
but I'm just thinking, well, would that fit in? And I think it could maybe, but and I've thought about it, but so maybe with little like some small exceptions, there really isn't any rule
Yeah.
really. It's
Yeah.
just
No.
like if I feel like making something heavy, I will, and if I don't, I won't. I mean, the newest stuff I've been working on, there's stuff that sound kind of like Deftones in there, like drums, guitar, bass, kind of thing. Just like because I'm just anything I'm feeling at the time, I'm just gonna do it. There's also like some shoegaze stuff in there.
Yep. Yep. I heard
On
that
the
a
new
little
stuff
bit.
I'm working on, like
I definitely reevaluated Deftones in recent years, or just in general, because like yeah, like when new metal really came out, like I'm a little older than you. I just turned 40 this year, but same general age range. But I was like, yeah, like new metal when it came out in high school, I was like, it's like a little bit cheesy. Like I was already kind of into whatever, like Neurosis and that kind of stuff. But then later,
oh yeah.
what I'm saying? But then later I went back and I'm like, okay, some of this is really cheesy, some of it is actually not. Deftones, I was like, this is legit. I was like, Deftones, like I fuck with this now, as a grown up.
Yeah, they're really
Yeah.
special. They're
Yeah.
really, yeah. They seem like a band to me that really didn't try to fit into anything. Like it might seem like they did, but I don't think so. Like they might have come from like hardcore and metalcore and stuff like that, and maybe their first album was, I don't know, even their first album was really unique.
Yeah, there's some
Like,
patent. Chino's got a patent, little patent in
yeah,
his
no,
blood,
he
but
really he really does. They just seem to have just, I don't know. It's just crazy how they just are who they are, and they always have been, and like they don't get swayed by any trends really, and they have such a unique sound. I
yeah,
just love them.
yeah. No,
But
it's
I
yeah.
wasn't cool enough to be into Neurosis when I was that age. I wasn't that cool yet. I was
Well,
listening to like underground like emo stuff, like 90s emo stuff that you only find out about in zines. But when it
that's
came to
yeah.
metal, like I was into Korn, I was into Cold Chamber, I was into the first Limp Bizkit album,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
I rechecked out the first Korn album recently, and it's fucking cool.
It
That bass sound is bizarre. Like the whole, it's and then I was watching old videos, and I'm like, they're like a lot less macho than I remember them. Like I remember
Yeah,
them
they
being
were
like,
so wimpy.
they had a wimpy vibe, and he had like almost like this Perry Farrell vibe going on of like this kind of
Yeah.
like, like he had like a, he's like a skinny dude, it was
Yeah,
like
he's
a
a
little.
little like sort of flamboyant and just like slightly feminine,
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't full on mask, like
but
what
also like temper tantrum kind of, like, I don't know. I always thought that early Korn, the first two albums really, because I kind of like the second one almost more than the first one. I find
mm,
them pretty similar, honestly. Um, but they always seem like such an emotional band to me. When I
yeah.
hear them, when I hear those first two albums, it's, yeah, it's heavy, but it's like it just seems emotional to me. I mean, Jonathan Davis is in a lot of pain. Most of his lyrics are really dark. Like
Yeah, it's bullied music, not
it really is.
bullying music. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah. No, oh my
trap,
God, that's so perfect.
trapped are bullies. This the
Yeah.
corn are like
Oh,
you
that's
know.
such a good distinction.
Of course, then again, that bullied vibe can go full circle into school shooter attitudes. Like that's the sort of or like the emo vibe where you're like the wounded emo guy, and then it goes full circle and becomes like misogynist kind of. There's like that.
Oh yeah.
That's a whole
Oh gosh, I
circle.
had no idea how misogynist that stuff was back then. Had no clue. It's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't because I was like that, so
Yeah, same.
I had to like
Same.
take yeah. But
Yeah, I mean, I've always been like, feminine and colorful and all that, but I was raised male, conditioned that way by the world, tried to live up to it in a lot of aspects, and I definitely was, I'm not going to pretend like I was not like that myself. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess I read just one interview of yours when I was sort of checking up. Like you said you recounted going to a Drive Like Jehu concert and feeling like it was this broed out like hockey fight shit. And I was like,
yeah,
ooh,
it
like
was.
I was like, that's like, cause Drive Like Jehu does that's not trap.
No,
Like to me, that's like
no,
it's
but
like, oh,
all
these
the,
guys are kind of smart. Like it's just like that's too brutal. Like, oh, like
well,
sorry to
and
hear that.
I hate to like, I don't want to be, you know, ageist, but because the crowd was mostly like a little bit older, I mean, a lot of times people get older and become more conservative, and I mean, my parents and a lot of my family members and friends' family members, they were, at Woodstock or wanted to be there, and now they're pretty conservative.
Yeah,
It's a thing that does happen.
yeah. Well, then
And I'm
there's
not
also
saying the people at the Drive Like Jehu concert were all like, they weren't in all like MAGA hats or anything, but it was, maybe I'm making a wrong association with like political party. I don't know. But it was more just like, yeah, just the energy was just kind of broy. I felt really out of place. I mean, I was wearing something kind of skimpy, and I was there with somebody who definitely fit in because we went together, my friend, and his name's Chad. um, but I think people were kind of like looking at us like, are they a couple? Like, so I don't even think it was just me. I think we were like a spectacle, but I also don't think
yeah.
that he noticed whatsoever that anything was weird. But yeah, I got plenty of weird looks, and
Yeah. But I feel like a lot of that old, like, I don't know, screamy emo or screamo, like a lot of that stuff from a certain time period, it had a certain political orientation just in the sense of being like anti-corporate, just
Hmm.
implicitly, because it's like underground local scene. So it's like, so that has a certain anti-corporate vibe. But then when it comes to like gender stuff or like being trans or even sexuality, it's like, they're not necessarily reactionary or homophobic. They're just kind of like, this wasn't part of the thing. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
it's sort of
there
like
were.
off topic to them.
I feel like there were. I mean, and I know you'll agree. I know you're not saying there weren't, but there were a lot of bands back then doing that stuff who were pretty ahead of their time in their progressiveness about you know being all inclusive with like literally any kind of gender or sexuality divergent from the binary. Um, but I think that some of the bands that weren't, um, yeah, I think you're right. It's like it's not like they're necessarily like homophobic or something. They're just kind of like, they just kind of like back off from it and like
Yeah.
don't really say anything or like take any kind of stand or whatever. They just
Yeah.
kind of like stay quiet and like I don't know. That's kind of how it felt being there. Like I didn't feel like I was like about to get beat up at all, but I also just felt like the one weird person there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw last year I went I flew to New York just to see Ride for Revenge. Do you fuck with Ride for Revenge at all?
I don't even know who that is.
They're like this like Finnish like pretty scary like black metal band. And yeah, I was like, the people at that show, 99% were scary to me. And like I'm like just, I'm like hetero and cis and like tall and shit. So it's like I don't usually, but these dudes, it was like so fucking like rune tattoos and just like huge dudes, just like straight up staring me down. And then there were just two people there who were like these like little like totally non-binary presenting like colorful, people. I mean, they were like 80 pounds. I was just like,
Mm.
I was like, fuck yeah, that takes something. That takes something to be at that
Gosh, I
show.
hope they weren't too freaked out.
They
I would
seemed
be
like they
so
were digging
scared.
it. They seemed like they were totally digging it. They
Well,
were
that's
they were
good.
they were more fearless about it than I was. See, maybe I was just tripping in my head, but dudes
Yeah,
looked like they wanted to
that's
fight.
inspiring.
Guys like they wanted to fight. It's scary music, and the fans are like they're like the music are, but yeah. So yeah,
I haven't been looking at the chat, but I want to address one thing really quick.
let's do it.
Marcus said, "What's wrong with bros? Shouldn't we accept and include everyone?" And I just want to comment and say what I mean by bros. Um, I'm not talking about anybody who might look any certain way. It's just it's an sort of macho and bullying attitude in a person that I'm referring to. If anybody, like usually bros is a derogatory term, and that's kind of why I feel comfortable using it because people usually know if I say bro, I'm usually referring to someone who's specifically like an ass. But as far as like people who might like have sort of that look to them, that style of dressing, and maybe they're a bodybuilder, or maybe they're just tall and they're strong and their voice is kind of tough sounding or whatever, like that, none of that stuff is what bro is. It's really, I'm just talking about like a jerk. Like I would never want to judge anybody based on how they look at all. Like I know people who are bros that are wonderful, sweet people, and I feel safe around them and they love me. So it's, yeah. So yeah, I just want to be clear that I'm not like trying to stereotype like men and say that like if you're a bodybuilder and you wear Oakleys, like you're automatically a homophobic piece of shit or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, totally. I mean, sometimes I use terms like that, bro. I'll use it in like a value neutral way. Like it's just not, it's just a descriptive term of a type of person that,
Yeah,
that could be bad or good.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I think, machismo is cool if it's just directed in a, just case by case, just how you're directing it. When are you using it? I mean, to
yeah,
be to,
sure.
to be ready to punch someone in the face is, I mean,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's necessary.
masculinity is beautiful, and I think it's just as valuable as femininity. And I don't know, when there's a big like sort of like imbalance in the world, maybe you want to, you know, try to balance it out with the things that we do. But yeah, I mean, masculine is great as long as it's healthy,
Yeah.
same with feminine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes with stuff, it's also weird, like when you're talking about actual like aesthetics, what's mask and what's femme, and like, like it's sort of, it doesn't always just line up in this one-to-one kind of thing. I mean, I think maybe
No.
in a few decades ago, maybe like the idea of having music that was screamy and aggressive, that would just be considered almost quote unquote masculine or something, and maybe people don't like view it in such simplistic terms now. But you use the word colorful though, or you said I used that like in a way you were like, I can't remember like how you dropped that, but you were like, oh, I wasn't like your typical like metalcore chick. I showed up colorful or something.
Yeah, I definitely went through a little bit of a phase where I thought like wearing mostly black like just looked really cool, but it was kind of around the time I was just obsessed with like Norma Jean. Like when their
Yes.
first album came out, I was just like way into that kind of thing. But it wasn't long before there was a big bright red streak in my hair or something. Um, but yeah, I just love color so much, and I've never felt that comfortable with lack of color. Like my outfits, my whole life have been pretty loud, like maybe most of the time, not always. Um, but these days, I'm too afraid of somebody bothering me, so I tone it down quite a bit when I'm going to the store or going out or something.
That's a shame to hear that. I don't
I
know. Maybe
know
maybe you don't mind. I mean, it's
it
you gotta
sucks,
like yeah.
but I sort of surrendered to it because what I want to be is happy and comfortable. And for some people, toning down their look, it just makes them so unhappy that they like refuse to do it. And I
Yeah.
think for a while I felt that way too. And then it got to the point where it's like, well, if I feel like I have a better time and I feel safer when I go out, if I'm like, not wearing any makeup at all and I'm just like wearing like a hoodie and my pajamas, if I can like go through that experience and people are generally like pleasant or polite or they ignore me, then I start to learn like that maybe I should look that way more often when I go out because I just have a better time because people are just
Yeah.
nicer. And it sounds like defeat on one hand, and it is, but like as far as where I am in my life, my own emotional and mental stability, like I need that peace. And if that requires me, stuffing my hair in a beanie and wearing, some navy blue sweatpants so I
Yeah.
can go to the diner and, have some breakfast with my partner, then I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'd rather be happy. But that's
Pick any
just where I am
balance.
right now, and that's just me. That's not like a projection onto like trans people or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, because some people might feel really compromised by that. But yeah, I mean, no, everyone,
Yeah, I used to, and then I
everyone.
kind of stopped, and I'm just okay with that. I just feel that way now, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Well, maybe on one level, it's almost that might feel pushed around to have to tone down your look, but then maybe you also feel pushed around if you feel like you have to go full blast all the time in order to like
Oh yeah, that's a
be
whole other
proud. You
thing.
know what I mean? It's like,
That's a whole other thing, and
yeah,
that's very real too. In fact, since I came out and since I started wearing makeup a lot more, eventually, like after that, when I decided I wanted to tone it down more, at least in public, um, I started to feel self-conscious because I wasn't wearing makeup, even though I spent most of my life not wearing it.
yeah,
Because and when I first came out, there was just so much pressure, and I brought it on myself, but it was also because of the culture too, to just be the woman you're claiming to be, walk and talk like one, and but I don't even feel that way anymore. I'm not even like I really just kind of feel like no gender, really. I'm just somewhere on the spectrum. I
yeah,
I like color and I like feminine like aesthetics, but as far as like how I feel inside, I was just thinking, I think it might have been this morning or yesterday when I was making coffee, I was just thinking to myself, like, and I started thinking about like he and using that for me, and I'm just like, whoa, that's like not, I'm not connected to that at all. And then I was just like she, like, you know, her, she, her, and then I was just like, I don't know, that sounds kind of weird too.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of don't even care
Right.
about
Yeah.
it.
Yes. I mean, it's weird. It's also, you know, these like what words mean changes based on just what everyone accepts, you know, words to mean. So it's like sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, well, he, him has worked for me forever and feels like it works now. But if things go a certain way and everyone who's not the guy from Trapped starts to go by they, them, or she, and like the only people left using he are like me and people like the guy from Trapped, then I'm gonna have to defect and go they. You know what I mean? Because right now he describes somebody like me. But if, you know, if it's only like UFC fighters that use he, then I'm gonna be they at that point. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like
Oh, that's
why even think
really
about this shit? But I don't know.
that's a really interesting point. Like you're making kind of an interesting point because it's like, you know, this is picking our pronouns and identifying as whatever our gender is very much about who we are. But is it really? Because it's also who everyone else is. I mean, we are in relationship to everything. If our culture wasn't the way it was, like imagine this fantasy ass world that's completely different where there's no gender oppression. There just never has been any. I bet you people would not really give a fuck so much about their gender.
Yeah. I've been saying that people a little bit don't like it when I say shit like that because it's
Oh
a
no, they
certain
don't.
type of man
Yeah.
saying it. But yeah, because I was saying, yeah, my friend was just kind of like he was saying a bunch of stuff that it wasn't anti-trans, but it was very much like on this like, yeah, but I mean, this kind of essentializes, and I have all these questions about what this means for language, and I was kind of like, well, yeah, people still aren't safe, you know, walking down the street if they're a certain way. So that's why people are digging their heels in a very identity politics way. You
That's
know,
exactly it.
when it's safer for people, then we can kind of just be like, all right, so what the fuck are we really talking about here? You know, like kind of like loosen it up a little bit. But it's,
Right.
you know,
Well,
yeah.
I think really the nuances in being able to embrace several dimensions at one time that exist simultaneously. On one level, gender doesn't mean anything, it doesn't matter. On another level, it is extremely, extremely important, especially right now. And I think the key to being able to navigate the whole thing is to be able to understand both of those dimensions, agree with both of them, and not have one negate the other in any way. I feel like that's the only way. I mean, that's what a lot of arguments are. Two people arguing about something that has like truth to it, and also probably has falsity to it as well. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's being made into like this dualistic one or the other thing when it can be some like beautiful like combination of both. And it's not even a compromise to embrace both. It's literally the reality that both are true.
Yes, yes.
But we naturally our minds are dualistic for one, and two, like our culture is extremely dualistic in the way it thinks about things. It's so polarizing.
Right,
Um,
right. It's like being non-binary about the topic of gender, not just being non-binary as your gender, but like
yeah,
having a non-binary view of like the entire topic in general or something, you know?
yeah, I
Sounds like,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just we just need to be sure not to bypass one dimension or the other. And honestly, I don't get I wouldn't fight somebody on trying to get them to embrace the gender doesn't matter side in a context in which that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
That's another part of not thinking dualistically. Like it's not always appropriate to be like, yeah, but gender doesn't matter. Person who's expressing themselves because they just got harassed because they're trans. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, language serves people, not the other fucking way around. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
just
Language
like,
is about communication.
yeah,
And language is also really shitty at communication because it's really limiting, and we only have so many words and letters, and
yeah,
reality and language are like language is like 1024 by 768, and reality is like HD.
yeah,
It just
yes,
it pixelates it, and makes it very rigid, and we have to put things in boxes in order to communicate, and it's
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's but yeah, things have to get simplistic sometimes, especially when you're like going back and forth on Twitter with someone who like literally wants you dead. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you gotta. I mean, not that I have that experience, but you know, et cetera. But I mean, actually, so now I don't know. We could get into. I wasn't necessarily going to ask you about. Well, we were talking about like Gnostic stuff and spirituality a little bit, but actually not quite. We could get to that also, but in a sort of related but not exactly the same. My friend Caroline says she was talking about vaporwave a little while back, and she says I got into theory through vaporwave. To be honest, I know Caroline primarily through the sort of philosophy Twitter, you know, kind of just that whole realm, the sort of theory cell.
so in theory, are you talking about like philosophy? Are you talking
Yeah.
about like music theory? Oh, okay.
No.
Cool.
She means. I assume she means. Yeah, like philosophy, continental philosophy,
Mhm.
and that kind of. Are you on that trip or not? Not so much.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I guess I'm mostly into, I guess, spiritual philosophy, but they're so it's so nebulous, especially when we're talking about ancient philosophy. It was so fused with spirituality at times. Um, but it's like I don't know much about Nietzsche, but I know about, you know, plenty of people who, plenty of saints and sages, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am with it. But at the same time, I have definitely studied plenty of philosophy, like in my spiritual research. Like I've gone through like courses, like college courses or whatever, like on it, but I don't really spend a lot of time with it after that. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, those things plant seeds, you know. Because I was like, I don't know, I was talking about vaporwave, not the vaporwave elements of you, but just like vaporwave in its genre sense. You know, it's like someone in the chat was talking about like Baudrillard, and I said end of history on some like Fukuyama shit. I don't know if you're into either of those
I'm not that
characters, but
familiar now.
that's yeah, like this kind of cold blooded, you know, what they used to call postmodern, but I don't. It may have a different name now. But so yeah, but so mysticism is more on the stuff we were talking about, the Gnostic realm, and the
Yeah,
occult.
yeah. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like I favor mysticism over philosophy. Like I'm sure lots of it agrees with each other and
It
disagree.
does.
But it's
It
like
absolutely does. Yeah.
I think the preference for mysticism has just been because I've been on my own like sort of self healing and self exploration journey, and you know that's been a vehicle for it. The
Yeah. Yeah.
mysticism or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, so much theory like is totally. I mean, you know, Marx or something is, you know, typically thought of as being like so anti mysticism, spirituality, etc. I could maybe agree that that's not true, but I don't know. Everyone, you know, the people who I meet online, I don't know, just like Caroline and that sort of realm, it's like very much into Deleuze and Guattari, who, as far as I am concerned, is completely compatible with the Hermetic tradition. You know, the occult, alchemy. Um,
Right. Yeah.
I almost don't understand how you could argue that Deleuze is not compatible with the occult and alchemy and stuff. But
I think a lot of times it has to do with a lot of times people are saying something really similar, but in a totally different sort of language. I
yeah,
find a lot of not even atheistic, but even just like uh what were my like materialist sort of philosophy. I find so much metaphor for mystical spiritual teachings. It's just like being said in a different language. It's like
yeah,
one person who says like there is no God, they might constantly talk about something in which spiritual people would call God,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. So it's like I find so much agreement among these things, even from people that they might be criticizing religion like really hard and saying it's bullshit, but then they're really just kind of saying the same things that Jesus was saying
yep,
when he was around, if he was around. So it's like You know what I mean? Some of the
Yeah.
most like atheist shit is very spiritual to me.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'm not fully equipped to make the argument, but as far as, yeah, like, I mean, in Marx, the most atheistic, like, dude ever to fucking pick up a typewriter or pen. But yeah, it's like, I mean, what capital means in his work, what labor means in his work. I mean,
Oh yeah.
the commodity fetish. I mean, that's not just. It's supposed to be a hardcore mechanical materialist, analysis of stuff, but that seems to me to get into some mystical elements of things being imbued with powers and stuff. I don't know, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not an expert on Marcus at all, but I
nor
find so much of Marxist theory to be things that I've learned in ancient Hindu and Buddhist and Christian and Taoist and Sufist texts. They agree with each other so much on so many different levels, like
yeah,
obviously especially in the ethical and moral departments.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I find them compatible.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, we dropped. Yeah, when we were chatting, we dropped Current 93, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
at least I dropped that. Yeah, is that a big
I'll
influence on
take
you?
it.
Is that yeah, yeah. As far as yeah, I mean, what? Yeah, I guess yeah, because you asked about me having Gnostic in my Twitter bio.
I
Uh,
just didn't know what you meant by it because, like, I guess I was surprised only because I just don't meet very many people who would use that term, and it's like in reference to the Gnostics. Because I mean, Gnostic it's a word that it doesn't have to be associated with the Gnostic people or the movement or the texts
yeah,
or anything, because it means like knowing,
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah. But it has that. I mean, I put Gnostic entertainer just because to me there's something kind of like humorous but like act correct in my head about
Yeah.
just this thing of like gnosis or Gnosticism being this like, total like retreat from the world, and this like idea that the world, things as they are, is like totally corrupt, fallen, unredeemed, and then it's like you've retreated and you've got this secret occult knowledge that you're sort of working with behind this screen. But then entertainment, it's like I'm just like getting money to like fucking shuck and jive on stage. You know what I mean? It's like there's just kind of I love just that idea. I don't know, that you're just
I love it
completely,
too.
like fucking around in the world, totally in the world, but then also like this weird kind of
Oh yeah, no,
uh,
that's so real.
reserving.
That's not that to me. That's just another example of non-duality. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the integrating one into the other. I mean, there's so many. There's people that used to be monks, and then they're just like, fuck this. I want to be a normal person, and they take what you know, they integrated their monk life into their day-to-day life. I think that, again, totally compatible. I think
Yeah,
Gnostic Entertainer is, I think that's fantastic.
it's a goal. It's
It
definitely a goal.
makes it makes sense to me. I mean, it makes total sense. Things from two different worlds, hooking them together, and that kind of thing usually makes sense to me when
Yeah,
that happens in the
yeah.
world.
I feel
Yeah.
like stand-up comics are like some of the most, when they're good, are like Gnostic entertainers. It's like bringing this total occult shit, but then just like putting it out there in this like totally the most plebeian context.
Uh,
Like
yeah, yeah, Duncan Trussell.
I haven't actually checked. People keep telling me to check him out.
Yeah, he's a lot. He's great, I think.
Oh, right. No. I did check him out. No, because my girlfriend is into the occult and magic, and he does that show, the animated show, right? That super surrealistic,
Yeah, I haven't even
crazy.
seen that yet, but yeah.
We watched an episode of that where he
Mhm.
had am I just old with the names? Fuck. Um, he had as a he always has these guests, and the guest was that guy who was locked up, Eric something, the guy who wrote High Magic. Um,
Oh,
the guy,
Damien Eccles?
Damien Eccles. Yes, Damien
Oh, I
Eccles.
just got
Yeah,
goosebumps because of,
at the name.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, so when I was really young, I found out about the West Memphis stuff and the
yeah.
documentaries, and I got really obsessed with it. And I wrote him a few letters when
You
I
did.
was young, when he was, in prison
Yeah,
on death row. And
yeah.
I I was in two bands that we named after that stuff. One was called I'm Sorry Damien. You're like a sounded kind of like slick, like prog slick shoes.
Okay.
And then and that was in another like sort of metalcore band called West Memphis 3.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's there. There it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah, and
still.
then when I just wanted to say really quick, like when and then when I saw a post on Instagram when he released that book. It was like an ad that I got, and I was just like, my just mind was like so blown because it was the first I'd ever heard of him since back then. And I read the post and I was like, oh my God, like I knew right away when I saw this book that like he had been transformed by his suffering.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, he's coming out with this like spiritual book on like magic spelled the right way even. Like
Yes. Yes.
and like and I just when I saw that I like was just overcome with like joy because I just knew because I remembered all the documentaries and all the research I did and just seeing that post and that advertisement, seeing him like free and writing a book about something spiritual. I was almost like not surprised. I was like, of course, like you came out like that, like because
Yeah.
I don't know that shit happens like
Yeah.
when
No,
you
trial
hit
by
the bottom.
fire. Yeah. I mean, he paid a price. He paid a price
Oh my God,
for his journey and stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I never. Yeah. My girlfriend went to see him speak in L.A., but this was before I moved out here. But yeah, she said it was completely amazing. And yeah, he's amazing on that show. On the show,
Oh, cool.
the
So I should
name.
find that episode specific.
Definitely that one. Yeah, there's some other ones. Yeah, I mean he's got Damien Eccles on there, and then also like just Joey Coco Diaz, like just the most like crass comedians. I mean, you know
Yeah,
that dude.
that's
Just like like this crazy spectrum. Um, but yeah, I mean, so I don't know. Yeah, like Gnosticism. I mean, you may know more about the actual history of that. I mean, I read like the Gnostic Gospels, and a lot of that sort of poetry and stuff from that early Christian kind of Gnostic realm. I kind of got into that through Current 93 largely.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I dove into it by listening to this really really long series on it. I think it was a university lecture, like 8-10 hours straight of it. I listened to it on the way and on the way back to California on a plane. Um, my mind was just so blown. I feel like I'm still not recovered from it. Um, yeah, it's crazy. It's beautiful and scary and reminded me a lot of the Hindu mythology and philosophy. A lot of similarities there.
Yeah, that I've checked out nothing from the Hindu realm at all. Like I know little. What's your
Mm.
entry point? What's your entry point with that, or what would my
Well,
entry
my
point be
entry.
if I were gonna?
Well, it depends on what you're going for, really. Like I mean, my spiritual inclination is always the contemplative one, the one of non-duality, and like early Hindu spirituality, like like the Upanishads and like Advaita Vedanta would be the specific, I guess, tradition maybe that I would call it. Like Vedanta it's referring to the Vedas.
Okay.
Those are different books, the Rig Veda, etc. But Advaita Vedanta is basically translated as self-inquiry. Inquiry, that's such a weird word. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like a spiritual practice, a meditative practice, and a sort of a philosophy or whatever. So that's all in the really early scriptures. There's just been so much, like after that, there's just tons of crazy, crazy shit. But yeah, I usually stick with the most ancient versions of things,
Yeah.
before they get all fucked up, you know?
Yeah. 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 Before it gets like fallen. So that's kind of
Yeah,
like
not that like later like Hindu like scriptures are like I'm not throwing them out or anything. It's all very helpful and it comes from the same like core, but like I don't really know much about anything other than the earliest stuff, the Vedas and the
yeah.
Upanishads.
But like the Vedanta, like it's a There's philosophy, but also practice. There's a practice to it,
Yeah,
and it's not
yeah,
religion. It's mystical. Self-inquiry is practice. Is
yeah.
it?
It's yoga, like all the yogas.
Okay.
The Yoga Sutras are a big part of it. I got into that basically from I guess Buddhism, and I got into Buddhism from psychology, and I got into
Yes.
psychology because I'm a mess.
Well,
I mean, we all
seem pretty
are.
together here. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like, I need help. I need therapists. So, I go to therapists, and, I started to read books on different, behavioral therapies and stuff, rational emotive behavior therapy and cognitive behavior therapy, blah, blah, blah. And,
Yeah.
that leads you to mindfulness and meditation. And that's obviously, sort of rooted in Buddhism. And then getting into meditation led me to all kinds of other traditions and types of meditation and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you what's your vibe on Carl Jung? You down?
Oh yeah, I
Thumbs up,
love
thumbs out.
Carl Jung.
You're down.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
there's so many dimensions in his work. So many. I find out about something new that he was into like all the time. Like, oh yeah, did you know Carl Jung was like way into this crazy thing? And I'd be like, no, I had no idea that too. Jesus.
Yeah. No, he's one of those. Yeah, like just yeah. I don't even know if people like that exist currently. I mean, just these kind of like like just people who are just like search around like a million different traditions and kind
We'll
of
find out about him more after they die.
yeah,
Probably.
yeah. Jung. I mean, the psychology and alchemy.
Mhm.
Was that stuff about that I got way into because my parents are both psychotherapists,
Oh
uh,
wow.
but of a non esoteric variety. They're more like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
not yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could say it's all kind of mystical in a sense, or sort of a
Yeah.
form of
Yeah.
mysticism,
Exactly.
because you're dealing with spirit and psyche, even if you don't see it that way. I was curious
Yeah.
about Jung though,
Exactly.
because Jung, like, I guess just on a like, I mean, he gets sometimes people bristle at Jung, or at least people in my realms sometimes bristle at Jung just because of like certain like gender essentialist stuff that like I don't think he's really coming down in that way, but there's just stuff like
The
actually ancient
times.
philosophy in general, any concept of like eternal truths, or like saying the feminine, like the divine feminine or masculine.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are like, what, so like you're not down with trans people, non-binary, like what the fuck, like
Oh yeah.
it
Yeah.
rubs
That's
people
not
the
it.
wrong way,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's really it took a while for me to sort of get my mind around the divine masculine feminine, like sort of, I don't want to say dichotomy because it's really about union and balance between them and all that kind of stuff, but it's not the divine masculine and feminine is not the same as any particular culture's representation of masculine and feminine, and everybody has a balance of the divine masculine feminine within them. They're somewhere on the spectrum there, and it doesn't mean like woman man, like it's like actually way too much to even go into, but
yeah, no, we don't need to, but
it
yeah,
just it took a while to reconcile it for me, and
yeah,
I've been
that's what
able to
I
do it, and
yeah.
it's really opened up a lot of new, really helpful like just thought for me for sure.
Yeah. No, totally. Because I mean, in a lot of that occult stuff and alchemy and Gnosticism, like the non-binariness is very
Hmm.
much a thing. Like Hermes or like Quicksilver,
Yeah.
as being sometimes represented by a non-binary person, so
Hmm.
that could be very attractive to contemporary discourse, but then it can also be somewhat, I don't know, like relegating the non-binary to some weird, like exception to reality or some kind of, like I don't know. It can be criticized in many ways, but yeah, maybe you don't want to go
Well,
fully
I'm
deep,
just
but
saying we wouldn't be able to like really cover like the subject. Plus, I'm not even like, I can't speak. I can't like really speak on it that much. I'm still learning, but one thing that's really obvious you got to take into context is like people will, they're a product of their conditioning, and I mean You know, if they grew up in a binary world, that's the language they're going to use. Like, you know, um, the language that Jesus used was like, you know, ancient Judaism, the you know, Roman traditions, and there was tons of paganism and like Greek and Norse like mythology, like in his language and the language of that time as well. Um, just like built in, like so much of the Old Testament is like there's tons of pagan and Norse shit in there that they've adopted, and
Yeah.
Sumerian stuff, blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
all
it's all like where
synthesized.
you are at the time. I mean, even the Buddha like said stuff that was kind of like could be taken as misogynist, but in his time he was like a feminist.
Yeah.
Like he was like, sure, women should be able to do more things. Like he was big on that, but you know, but at the same time, nowhere near as much as we this collective consciousness is awake to, you know, far more progressive form of it than back then. So
Yeah. I think there needs to be, you know, I think people who are into progress and change, you know, shouldn't be as allergic to the idea of like things, there's certain things being essential or timeless or transcendental or like, you know, higher law. Like it doesn't. You can still have progress and change and difference throughout history, and not be totally allergic to the idea of like fixed principles or like essences or whatever. You know, it's just how they're configured
yeah, I
or
mean,
what
we're gonna
we're
keep
doing with them.
progressing until, you know, till the Earth is done. I mean, I'm just talking about, you know, humans. I don't. It won't be over when the Earth is done, but like, yeah, the progression is never ending. Um, some people want to say that, you know, we were far more connected to the source in ancient times than we are now, but at the same time, we were far more in the dark to a lot of things than we are now at the same
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost, yeah, like you could view human history. It's like as progress or as sort of like dissolution or degeneration. It's like not, they're not even totally separate things. But you know, it's, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no, they're very
This is
integrated.
David. David says, quotes from the Gospel of Thomas. David says, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that male will not be male, nor the female be female, then you will enter the kingdom.
Yeah,
There it
yeah. I
is.
mean, and when we're talking about entering the kingdom, like we're talking about like of a state of mind. That's what the kingdom of heaven is in that context. And I think it's just, yeah, it's basically saying, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. It's like a weird way to say it because it's like translated from an ancient language, but like I basically think it's saying, you know, it's talking about equality and not even equality, but like almost on that level I was talking about earlier when I said like on one level gender like doesn't even matter, like it's not a factor. And I think in a way this is kind of saying like all the genders everywhere on the gender spectrum, you know, it's a whole. It's all of one, you
Yeah.
know, as a whole, but it manifests itself in all of these different variances and everything, like in our everyday, but like ultimately, you know, realize oneness and then you'll enter the kingdom, then you'll get it, then you'll wake up, then you'll progress, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, is Gospel of Thomas? That's a so-called Gnostic gospel, right? That's not a
Yeah,
canonic, not a canonic one.
it's not in the Bible
Yeah,
because a bunch of, you know, people decided that it was too kooky.
yeah, because of stuff like this. Yeah, it's like they didn't want. Yeah,
Yeah, the Gospel of Thomas is super sick.
yeah, the gospel. Yeah, the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene, right? That's another one.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I love that stuff.
Oh
It's been
man.
such a joy to undo all of the bullshit that mainstream Christianity did to me when I was growing up.
Oh,
It's
so you
great
grew
to.
up.
Well, I wasn't raised Christian. I went through a phase like from like 14 to 18 where I was going to youth group and I kind of like got into that whole thing. And then I just read The God Delusion and was just like, yeah, that's what I fucking thought. That's what I thought the whole time. I knew this was so stupid. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. It can't be true. It's not, it can't be real. It can't be it. And now that I'm sort of relearning kind of what Christianity originally was and what it was originally saying, and whether or not like any of the stuff that's been written ever even happened, like doesn't matter so much as what it was originally supposed to be communicating to people. And now that I'm sort of rediscovering that, it's just been really awesome. And one big reason is because it sounds so much like the spirituality I've already been familiar with in Vedanta and Sufism and Buddhism and everything. It's agreeing with all of those things. Yep. So, I just like get excited to like finally like figure out that actual Christianity is actually not horrible, oppressive bullshit. It's actually really fucking sick.
Yeah, some people are coming around to this. I mean, yeah, I could, Dawkins probably it's very valuable at a certain age, right? Especially
it's extremely valuable. I needed it. I needed that.
But then you see culturally where this leads. I mean, the post like the Dawkins, just as a culture, as a youth thing, the sort of new atheism of like, I don't know. I find modern young people's atheism coming out of Dawkins to be like really annoying. Like, I mean, if you know what I mean, like,
yeah, I totally agree. It was like, but see, the thing is that that was an essential part of my journey. I needed to be shaken the fuck out of that fundamentalist stuff. I really needed to be shocked out of it.
Yeah.
And the God Delusion did it in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. Richard and that whole sort of scene, I mean, I don't believe in the shit that they don't believe in either. That's the thing. That's where we're the same. Yeah. Of course the shit that they're calling out is bullshit. I agree with them. But, there's another dimension to me where to that scene it stops there. It stops at materialism. Yeah. So I think they're on the right track in a lot of aspects, but then in others, they're willfully shutting down.
Yeah, this is, I mean, just like there's a hyper-rational, this smug, hyper-rational, anti-spiritual kind of orientation people slip into when they've successfully called bullshit on things about Christianity that needed to be, needed to be
just more
washed
dualistic
away.
Thinking. It's just more polarization. It's more... Well, it's not this, so it can't be anything.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. To me, I don't know. It's like the practice of music answers for me so many questions without verbally answering them. I mean, there is this kind of just literally writing melodies will bring me back to some kind of centered place of feeling like I'm able to even tackle these questions. So I to say that writing music is an alchemical occult practice, it can sound facile to people, but I have to say it, I mean, I have to come down with that.
If you make it that way, or if you experience it that way. I mean, a lot of people are just doing formulas. They're just like, how can we make a hit,
Yeah.
But even in that sense, if somebody is so talented at formulating a hit, and it just flows through them and it's this divine experience, that can even be just as legit. So
that could be, yeah.
If that's your experience or what you make it, that's completely like, I'm fine with that. I'm very comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, because it's like, I don't know, when I think about it, like alchemy was really, in the Hermetic tradition was always my, like, I don't know, at least aesthetically or even just reading stuff, that was what I got most hyped about. Just that was that sort of European mystery cult angle.
It's very aesthetically.
It's very like, it's exciting.
It's super cool.
And so I kind of, I don't know, when I always think about alchemists, this thing of like meditating on materials and kind of that proto-chemistry thing where you're dealing with these like oils and like sulfur and stuff, but you're like kind of reading into it and like interpreting, and you feel like you're teasing out like the spirit in matter, And I kind of always
there is spirit in matter. I think matter is spirit.
yeah, just
all is spirit.
that non-duality thing. I mean, it's writing music to me often when it's going well, when it's not like some forced like just hammering it out, but when you're in the flow state and it's happening, it always has that kind of sense of being hunched over some sound and you know, not trying to push it around too much, but to sort of communicate with it in a way that kind of expresses what it already is imminent to it. I mean, that kind of, you know,
you're nailing it.
Yeah, that isn't necessarily what someone who hears my stuff, even someone who loves it, they're not necessarily gonna be like, oh yeah, that's what that is, you know. But when I'm doing it, that's what that is. So then, you know, it's like,
I mean, that's okay. People sometimes think that I'm just throwing random shit together.
I know.
In my music. Just Fire-Toolz is Angel's collage project where she takes metal and vaporwave and jazz and puts it together. So
yeah, people love genre. They love that idea. But
I'm fine with genre as long as you list at least 20 of them if you even want to.
There's a minimum, right. Yeah, it reaches critical mass where it stops being being a little patchwork and becomes this. Yeah,
Depends on who you're talking to. You know, if my neighbor down the street was like, so what kind of music do you play? I would be like, electronic.
I think that reads for a lot of people because it's people know that could be weird. People are ready for electronic, quote unquote, to be weird. You know?
Yeah. Also, you can connect with someone though, because the last time I told somebody that I guess I was being kind of judgmental because I guess I just kind of assumed what they would and wouldn't know, which is really stupid. But I did it anyway, and I said electronic, and he was like, "Oh, like Kraftwerk," and I was like, "Oh, we can talk, I guess."
Yeah, we could talk. yeah. No, I hate underestimating. I feel it's so embarrassing when I'm like, "Oh, it's weird stuff," like you wouldn't, you know what I mean? And they're just like, yeah, they're ready.
Like, I'm into weird shit, and then you're like, "Oh," and they're like, "Yeah, like David Bowie," and I'm like,
well, you're like, that's good stuff. It's not weird
you're
stuff.
Getting there.
Yeah, totally. Let's take some more. Let's see what we got going on in the.
Yeah, we've been ignoring everybody.
In the question. Well, I mean, Lewis, this is he wants to know if you're a fan of liturgy. I feel like it's such an obvious yes that it's like, how can you not be, right? Or no? Or
No, well, here's the funny thing. It's like I like them, and I've heard it on multiple occasions, and I've always been like, this is really cool. I don't know why I like never got like super into it. Like I never made the initiative to like dive deeper than what had already crossed my path, and I really don't know why, because I like it. And I got into a discussion about a recent album cover of theirs with a friend of mine he just hates the album cover because things are a little off center, and it's just like text and some lines, and it looks very amateur, and I just think it's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's
awesome. Oh, good. I love it. And I've seen like some of Hunter's tweets in the past and thought they were cool. I think I've commented on a few of them. But like, yeah, I probably need to get into liturgy, right? I probably need to.
She's no joke.
Still haven't. I feel like an idiot. It's 2020, and I'm still not paying attention to liturgy.
She's no joke. I mean, you can't get to everything, but yeah. I mean, I love HAQQ, the new one, actually the best.
Yeah, I didn't even listen to it.
The artwork might, like David says, the artwork might actually be the better entry point for you, because it's just so out there. It's a very
I mean, I will listen to the most unlistenable shit. I mean,
yeah.
I will listen. I really like the most obscure like noise kind of stuff you can think of. Just like, you know, if it's uncomfortable, if it's too weird, if it's like what the fuck, then I'm like really attracted to that.
Yes, yeah. Confusion is a beautiful. I don't require it. But being initially very confused by music is something that's an aesthetic experience that I value very highly. You know, some of my favorite
I like
stuff,
that too.
you know, whether at any point in my life, you know, first time I heard Naked City, John Zorn, I mean, just that stuff. It's like, I was just like, how the fuck, what the fuck? And then it's like later you absorb or, you know, or Current 93 and that, you know, it's Throbbing Gristle, period. I mean, that's just very confusing music. But, yeah, like, I was actually, you know what, this is almost like bringing questions to a more pedestrian zone, but we could maybe take it back here and then go philosophical again with it. It's just like playing live. I mean, what's I've seen pictures of you playing live, but you seem to not be sweating the quarantine isolation of not playing live, because I'm like crawling up the fucking walls here, not playing gigs. I mean, I'm really just
I'm
not into
sorry.
it. But you seem you're not playing live is not like this.
No, it's not my favorite thing to do. I used to love it a whole lot more. And I used to want to do it as much as possible. And it's a combination of just like a natural progression of a personality, but it's also, um, I think it has something to do with like the kind of music I'm playing. Um, Playing live for Fire-Toolz, I can't really venture off at all. It doesn't feel very freeing. Things are extremely calculated. I have
Yeah.
my videos that are syncing to the music, and um, all of the vocal effects and stuff I use are so specific, and I have to be like glued to like my table, and so it's just not very expressive. Like what's expressive to me is making the material and even just releasing it into the wild, like knowing it's out, knowing it's
Yeah.
sitting on the internet so people can see it. That to me almost feels like playing live. Like it's I'm able to yeah, that satisfies that to me, being able to express it and make it available. But playing live, I don't know. I'm just finding it less and less appealing. But then I think about, okay, well, what if I was like playing in a band? Or what if I was doing more free improv type stuff that I used to do? I might be more interested in it. I might be more adamant about it.
Yeah.
But as far as where I am in my life right now and my relationship to music and my audience is, yeah, just I don't like playing shows a whole lot. And
It's
I,
not totally required. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's
no, it's
very
not.
black metal of you. You know.
Well, when shows are happening again, if that ever happens, I will play shows.
Yeah.
But just not like a whole lot. I mean, even when I was playing shows before the pandemic, it wasn't that often. Um, I would go, months in between, and I'm perfectly satisfied with that. Like I miss people a lot, but there's something about staying up late in an uncomfortable environment that's not very relaxing,
Yes.
and it's just not comfortable and appealing to me. Like I'd rather be safer and comfortable, like in my pajamas and
Yeah.
like sipping a coffee, like watching one of my favorite YouTubers. That's like my idea of like fulfilling like experience,
I feel that. Yeah. I feel. Who are your favorite YouTubers?
Um, well, in the music world, I really love Ben Levin, and Adam Neely. I'm even kind of a Rick Beato junkie.
Okay, I
Um,
don't even know these. Yeah, yeah. I should
yeah,
actually spend more time on YouTube in a way. I spend time doing it, but actually, like, but
well, yeah, there's a lot of time that you can waste
yeah,
on YouTube, but I feel like my YouTube usage is I'm trying to be educated, and if I'm not being educated, I'm trying to just goof off with people that I feel like are kind of good people.
yeah, yeah. Are those music people you were talking about?
The people I just
Ben Neely?
mentioned are music people.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, I watch like a whole lot of like spiritual stuff, like a lot of talks and presentations and interviews. I work for a podcast, a spiritual podcast, kind of like an interfaith thing, where like every other guest is like from a totally different like tradition or whatever.
Oh, cool. What's that
Um,
called? What's that podcast?
it's called Buddha at the Gas Pump.
Buddha at the Gas
It's kind
Pump.
of like a low budget, sort of laid back type thing. I mean, it's just my friend Rick in his living room, him and his wife and stuff, and he has people over Skype, and yeah, so a whole lot of that stuff. And then I watch just a lot of cat stuff. Um,
Just straight up cats, just fucking
yeah,
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 chasing yard,
there are
just
cat
being cute.
YouTubes like rescues, but also like like people that have like 10 cats or whatever, and they every video is like a new thing. Like I give my cats an obstacle course, or I
Oh,
feed my cats this food for the first time, or just it sounds silly, but it
That's
just gives
fucking
me so
adorable.
much joy. Like, and other animals too. Like, I watch the panda live stream. I put the
This
birds on for my
this
cats.
episode. Yeah, yeah. I just got into. We just got a dog, like a Chihuahua, a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago. We love this guy Geo, and we now we put on TV. We put the like from the dog's point of view
Mhm.
cam,
Yeah.
rolling on the beach with other dogs.
Oh yeah.
That's wholesome shit right there.
Yeah, it really is. I have a super wide monitor, so on the left side, I have 24-hour two live cat streams on my screen, and they've been up for like 2 years now on my computer. They're just always there. So
That's
I'm
sick.
constantly like, and they're always rescuing like pregnant moms that are like, in danger, have like health problems. So like, I'm just constantly like getting to know these litters of kittens, and they grow up and get adopted, and then they bring new ones in. And I remember the first time the kittens that were brought in like got adopted, I like had a really hard time. And now I'm just like used to it, like constantly like just cycling.
Yeah, yeah, life cycles. They're a part of your life. This I did not really know about, that you would like get on that vibe of like following a cats through their life, and they're in your life. They're like pets. They're actual pets in your life.
Yeah, like I
Um,
try not to like project anything like overly human onto them, or like make their personalities more complex than they are, or anything like that. But at the same time, I mean, they're just such beautiful beings, and they have all kinds of little tiny things about their personality, like so many nuances. And I just yeah, I just love them so much. I love watching them grow and progress. Like, my cats, like, I swear every 3 months there's like a new like little thing that they do, and they'll do it for a few months and then it'll fade away. And it's like, it's just so cool, like seeing, it's like not static, it's not every day the same thing.
yeah,
So
quirks. Yeah, little personality quirks. Weird. Yeah, yeah. Just
yeah.
that animals can be actually weird. It's not just this normal fucking
Oh
batch
my
of organisms. They do have. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're incredibly weird. They're so weird. They do the stupidest shit. They really do.
yeah. Let's see. Should we like get some? I always want to like. Yeah. I ignore people for a while, and then I end up going back and
Yeah,
seeing what people
there's
wanted
been
to
like a
know.
lot of there's been a lot of questions that I didn't answer, and it's not like we could have gotten to them, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah, we don't have to
I
do
almost
everyone,
feel
but
like Marcus, if you don't mind short answers, you can just like email me everything you've asked me, and when I have time, I'll just like do like a numbered list and like try to answer them for you if you really want me to. So,
that's a good vibe.
yeah.
That's audience engagement.
Well, if the chat was like seriously like popping off, just like flying off the walls, like I probably wouldn't say that, because I don't have a lot of time, like a lot of
Yeah.
free time. But I wouldn't mind answering some of the ones that I've seen scroll by.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, on topic of internet engagement, just being like really engaged with fans. I mean, you must talk to, or maybe not, but just you're saying you kind of like don't really play a ton of shows, so that means you kind of like you're blowing. I mean, I don't know if you use the term blowing up or whatever, but you're like gaining a bunch of recognition like purely online. I mean, or mostly, almost entirely, just putting out the music and people just finding it
yeah.
online the way I did, just being like, oh, this
Hmm.
looks cool. Friends of friends are into it.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so yeah, just never touring with people. So yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all you need. But do you engage with fans a lot? Like, I mean, do you do a ton of like talking back and forth with people, or
Um, I mean, people hit me up on the regular. Like, my DMs are always popping off, and
yeah,
I try to. But see, it doesn't happen so much that I like literally can't keep up with it.
yeah,
I'm kind of afraid of it getting to that point, because I'm gonna start having to ignore people, and that that really bugs me. But yeah, I engage. I mean, I'm on social media. Like, I use Twitter. I run my mouth on there. Um, but See, I really do love people, and I love connecting with people. But there's an element to being out in public and being around crowds that feels really unsafe to me. And there is an element that's actually like that actually is unsafe. But most of it is just my anxiety and my temperament. So being able to communicate online feels safer because like I'm lounging in my computer chair in my bedroom while I'm engaging with people, and I know that like there is an enormous amount that is lost in that. Like this is not nearly the same as like intimacy with people. I realize that, so I'm totally missing that.
Yeah.
But it's not like me not preferring to play shows has anything to do with me like not wanting to engage with fans. But to be honest, in person, if I am sort of like, I don't want to say bombarded, but I don't know. Sometimes it can happen with like a lot of people, or like I'm getting a lot of attention. I don't really like that a whole lot, and it just energetically just like wears me out. Like it
Yeah.
really does a number on me. And if I like play a show, I'm like done for weeks. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to play another one for weeks. Just even if I have like the best time ever, and everyone there I already know, it's like still just very draining
Yeah,
for me.
touring is
So
so fucking nuts. I mean, I miss it. This COVID hit right in the middle of the Psalm Zero tour with KO Dot. We were doing all the way down
what
in
a
Miami. It was like just hitting stride. I was just like, yeah, like this is just the
so
spirit.
bad.
But I don't know if, yeah. I mean,
Well,
tour will wear you out.
I like touring. I like touring because I get to travel, and I have my safe box that I can retreat to anytime I need to. You know, the vehicle.
Yes.
And I did a tour this past December with Street Sex.
Oh, so
Um,
you do tours and stuff. Yeah, those are my
yeah,
boys.
and
I love them. I
I've
know them.
toured like 10 to 15 times in my life. Like
Oh yeah, okay.
I've been out for up to a month and a half at a time before. So I used to do this a lot more. um, but yeah, and I did that tour of Street Sex, but it was like I went alone. I rented a car. I went alone. I swear I spent most of my time in that car.
Yeah.
I was just, I don't know. I just don't like hanging out in these loud, crowded places. I'm not made for it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
don't mean to
when
like repeat myself, but
no, yeah, but yeah, when you're at that level where like there's a good turnout for the show, but like you don't have that hooked up green room shit happening. So you like
yeah,
so like if you
yeah,
go
that's
in
something.
like if you're at the show, you have to be talking to people. You can't just be like,
Yeah,
like
and I have to
just
sit behind my
maxing.
merch table, and
There's that too,
I need to
yes.
like sell my shit. I need to be there to like pay my way through the tour. Um, so I'm just very vulnerable, you know.
Yeah.
Anybody can approach me, and but I had a really great time. I remember on that tour never feeling like panicked. Um, because I mean, street sex were cool, and the venues were mostly cool, and I met cool people, and I really love being alone, and I toured by myself, so there was a whole lot of solitude, and um, it was really nice. Going across Kansas by myself was really beautiful.
That's a
So
vibe.
yeah, I have like kind of a maybe a love-hate relationship with touring and shows. Honestly, I want to like I feel an itching to do it more. Like I want to tour again. I want to go on a cool tour with a cool band and play in a different place every night and show up and like soak up the vibes of a new area and like experience that energy of an unfamiliar place. Like I really do love doing that. So it'll happen again if we can go back out and breathe other people's air
Yeah, right.
again.
I just love the simplicity of like on tour where it's like your life is just stripped down to that one thing that you have to do. Like that's it. You wake up and you just have to get to the place and play the show. There's something about that that's sort of I don't know. There's a spiritual nature to me somehow. Just there is something monastic about it, even though you're like around so many people. It's just like
Yeah,
your
it's pretty.
life gets
It's like
whittled down.
ritual. It's
Yeah,
ritual, and it's also just yeah monastic because it's like that's all there is to do.
yeah,
Um, I personally feel a bit suffocated by that, and if I can't relax a little bit, I have a much harder time. And the beautiful thing about the tour with Street Sex, as opposed to a lot of other tours I've been on, is that the drives are relatively short, and I'm kind of an early bird anyway. So I would just like wake up at like 7 and get on the road and get to where I'm supposed to play, like, 8 hours before the show, and then I
That's the
can
shit. Yeah.
go find a coffee shop or go find a park or something.
Yeah, totally, totally. I saw it, man. Yeah, I guess too bad you weren't on that. That wouldn't have been the tour you were on when I saw Street Sex last year here in LA. They played with Portrayal of Guilt, which was
It might. I'm not
so
sure. It
sick.
might have been the same like tour, but I was only on like a leg. Like they
Yeah,
split. They did like a shit ton of touring, but they just like toured with one artist for a few weeks and someone else for a few weeks. They had different people hop on and off.
yeah, yeah. No, it was so good. He has Portrayal of Guilt and Foie Gras. Yeah, it was sick. But
Yeah, I don't know either of those bands, so I
yeah,
should probably listen to them.
they're brutal. I mean, if you're into like just brutal, like I don't know,
Absolutely.
Portrayal of Guilt is kind of they're very 90s. Like it's like kind of like the sweet spot between like I don't know, like Today's the Day and like Unwound or something.
Oh, that's cool.
If that's up your alley, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Word. Well, cool. All right. I feel like we got some ground covered, Angel.
hmm
I don't know. Did you is there any kind of things you wanted to get into to sort of wind down, or any questions here that are
Um,
screaming? Because I could go for hours and hours, but I also kind of ride
yeah, we can.
waves.
I mean, the podcast I edit for, their conversations are usually 2 hours. That feels like kind of
Yeah.
a good chunk.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through the questions here. Um, I saw someone say they can relate to my experience with Christopher Cross. I assume Andrew's talking about maybe something I shared in the past about the first time I heard him. I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to, but yeah, I have a deep, deep love for Christopher, and I feel like I haven't listened to him in like a couple days now, and that feels kind of bad. So I might pop on one of his records after our conversation.
Him, I don't know
Um,
Christopher Cross. Yeah.
yeah, I really love him. Um, oh, earlier Marcus asked what Prayer for the Abuser is about. I guess that's kind of like super heavy topic, but there all the lyrics are actually siphoned from the Prayer for the Abuser, the official one, accredited to Kuan Yin, which is an ancient symbol of compassion. It started out in like Chinese mythology, I think, but then made its way into Buddhism. And the characters sort of changed genders over time. So it's kind of like an androgynous figure to me. Um, and the lyrics, yeah, I kind of just took lines from a longer poem and put them in the song, the ones that stood out the absolute most to me. And I kind of feel like it's too heavy to go into, but it's just a really beautiful poem, and it's kind of challenging to read, especially in times like these when we're dealing with police brutality and stuff like that. Because, like, spirituality, it all teaches compassion and how important it is, and that's like one of the main points of all traditions. So it's like, what does compassion look like when you're dealing with, like, brutalizing racist cops? Like, that's really, really fucking like a crazy hard subject. And I don't actually want to go into it right now, but that song like embodies that energy. I think at least it does for me, and that's why I wrote it. Um, and it's really short because I was like running out of time, and I felt like I needed to touch on that. I needed to put that song on the album, so I kind of like made this short song to fit into everything else, just so I could put it on there. I feel like I needed to like seal the deal with it. So yeah, look up Kuan Yin's Prayer for the Abuser on the internet. You might find a transcription in English, and you can read it and see how you feel about it. Yeah, that's probably all I'll say about that, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, yeah, I don't know.
David knows
Um,
his stuff.
yeah, David really does. I feel like David, I need to just like talk to him like in a DM at some point or
Yeah.
whatever. And yeah, shout out to my friend Emily, who's in the chat, or was at one point. We've known each other for a really long time.
Yeah. I think
Oh,
you, yeah.
I wanted to. I remember seeing this scroll by. Shock These Trees said Charlie asked Angela about her screamo band 816, which is one of my favorites in the genre. So everything's finally coming out on vinyl. All the vinyl is done. The inserts have just been designed. I guess they're being printed. It's a joint effort between a friend of mine in Boston and this label in Canada, who are gonna put it out. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's super close. It's been so long that we've been working on this, and we're finally almost there. So the 816 stuff will be out on vinyl soon, and I'll be sure to post things on the internet about it when it comes out. So
Nice. Oh,
yeah,
here we go. The last minute, we got Kirsten, who is the love of my life and is in the other room here. Um,
nice.
and she says, yes, Kuan Yin on their Lotus. Amazing. Kuan Yin and Sekhmet. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. Is
yeah. I
Sekhmet,
just
oh, sorry, no, what were you going to say?
no. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say Kirsten's way into Sekhmet. Sekhmet has like a sort of spiritual connection with her, like past life wise.
Oh, that's really great. No,
Yeah.
I actually am not as familiar. I mean, I hear segment referred to constantly. There's so many words I hear mentioned all the time in the kind of talks and stuff I listen to, but I don't even really know what segment is. So,
Yeah, Egyptian realms. When I used to do
oh,
this,
that's cool.
when I used to do this in the back room of our house, I had a little Sekhmet drawing in the back that Kirsten had.
Is it connected to like like early Egyptian spirituality and philosophy, like the law of
Definitely,
one, or like Ra and stuff?
definitely Egyptian, but I don't know. Yeah, Kirsten
Uh,
would know better than I
cool.
would. But maybe, yeah, maybe y'all
Yeah,
are
just
into.
recently been getting into Ra and the law of one. So that's been a recent interest. So I'm not sure if Sekhmet is connected to that or not. But
Yeah, I haven't heard you talk about Crowley much. Crowley, I'm not deep on him particularly, but I know he goes Egyptian. I don't know, it's
yeah,
yoga. He's into
I'm
yoga.
not either. I don't really know too much about him. I mean, I hear quotes often, and I know roundabout who he was, but yeah, I never was gripped by any of his writing. I don't think.
Yeah, there's a certain like quote unquote evil aesthetic to it, which is not necessarily the point of him, but that's
Yeah,
sort of it's how he gets sort of spun in
that's true. Yeah,
culture
that's
or
true.
whatever. But yoga wise, you're into like OG yoga, in the spiritual sense, not just in the relaxing sense, So
Yeah, but
I
the
know he brought that
relaxing
around.
part of it is pretty goddamn important to me because relaxation is something I really need. My nerves are always ready for something
Yes.
that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with relaxation. Very, very needed.
Oh yeah, so
Um, yeah. Yeah. Kirsten does like ritual magic involving Sekhmet and some of these other.
oh that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Kuan Yin. Yeah. We'll have to check out Kuan Yin with the
Mhm.
prayer for the abuser. That sounds so
Ra is
like
her. Mm.
Oh, is Sekhmet? I didn't actually know. I didn't actually know that Sekhmet was feminine.
Mm,
My bad, babe. Um,
that's pretty cool. Well, I'm gonna get to it eventually then. Um, if Ra is Sekhmet's dad, then I'm sure I'll wind up there pretty soon.
yeah, I didn't. It's great. Yeah, Kuan Yin. Yeah, prayer for the abuser. That totally doesn't sound like something that would be ancient. It sounds like a very contemporary uh thing. I don't know.
No,
That's
it does. I mean, it is a translation, but it's not even like a super modern one. I mean, it was translated ages ago.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it does sound, yeah, because calling somebody an abuser, that feels like kind of a new thing.
yeah, yeah.
But
I mean,
the Kuan Yin just wants the abuser to realize their true nature and fucking stop abusing, obviously.
hmm,
But by realizing their true nature, they are healed and they stop hurting people and they start loving people. That's sort of the message of it.
yeah,
So, in that sense, I think that's super ancient, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right on. Well, I'm feeling good. You feeling good? Should
Yeah,
we
I'm feeling good.
yeah,
Yeah.
we could do we could yeah, we could call it, I think.
Cool.
Well, Angel, thank you so much
Yeah, you're welcome.
for swinging by and doing this. I had a blast, and
Yeah, me too.
I think we got a lot of great stuff said. Um, yeah, petalite and black tourmaline. We got a lot of black tourmaline in the house for sure.
I don't
It's
know
good shit.
what those do or what they are, but
But yeah, protective
maybe I'll do
stones.
that.
Yeah, protective stones. Yeah, we didn't even get into like stones or crystals, but yeah,
We should.
thanks to everyone in the chat too.
Yeah, thank you for being here, everybody. And sorry that I didn't get to everything. You can bug me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right. I'll see you online in various realms, Angel.
Yep. All right, cool. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. There you have it. Angel Marcloid. Yeah. I was loving the engagement here. People asking like real questions and stuff. I feel like just the quality of the chat, the quality of the comments has kind of gone up a few notches. There aren't any comments here where I'm like, dude, get the fuck out of here. It's all, I think it's all like thoughtful stuff. So yeah, I actually don't have anyone officially booked for the next live stream, but I've got some people in the works for sure. Got some solo things coming up. Plugging my own shit, I just put out a couple of these 2 new chamber music tracks that are they're old chamber music pieces, but they're up on my Bandcamp, on the Charlie Looker Bandcamp. Yeah, like a 12 piece ensemble, large ensemble piece, and a percussion duo. So yeah, check those out if you're looking for new stuff from me. And yeah, that's about all for today. Yeah, a lot of fun, having a lot of fun with these. Hopefully I didn't get the blurry glitchy face. I'll look back at the YouTube and see if that was smooth today. All right, bye everyone.